To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. And right about now you might be thinking of that refrain from the song Turn, Turn, Turn by the Byrds. And it became an international hit in 1965. But Pete Seeger first wrote the song in the 1950s, and he never liked the Byrds version. But those lyrics are thousands of years old. As I think many of you know, they come from chapter 3 in the book of Ecclesiastes, almost verbatim from the King James Version. And Ecclesiastes, if you haven't read it, gives us a really great launching point to ponder life, death, and prepare an ethical will. What is an ethical will? Well, in days of yore, the last will and testament was not just for passing along your stuff that was left after you died, but also your values. So the will addressed the distribution of property and assets, and the ethical will is the testament of the will and testament. An ethical will enables us to speak words of truth before the end of our days on earth. It enables us to share those life lessons that we've learned over the course of our, hopefully, decades on earth. The writing of an ethical will is something that's fostered in Judaism. When adults reach the age of 50, anybody want to admit they're over 50? You're considered to be an elder of the congregation with enough life experience to dispense words of wisdom. And many synagogues have a program where 50-plus individuals are invited to study Ecclesiastes, write their own ethical will, and read it aloud to the congregation at a special Sabbath service during the fall harvest festival, Sukkot. And guess what? Right now is Sukkot. It started last Friday, and it will finish this Friday. And it's appropriate to share the harvest of our wisdom during this special harvest festival holiday. And I'm sorry you didn't get to read Ecclesiastes before today, but let me share with you a little bit about it. It's a short book. It's got 12 chapters. And the author is purported to be King Solomon in his later years. And in this book, he writes of work and pleasure, of youth and age, of riches and poverty, wisdom and foolishness, the vanity of our lives, and death. Now, we're in the death business here, and I'm sure you have witnessed many, many funerals where maybe the person didn't live up to higher ideals. We know how difficult it is with some people. You just are like, yeah, I'm not so sad they're dead. But in Ecclesiastes, there are 3 key themes that emerge. That we toil our lives under the sun. The phrase, "there is nothing new under the sun," comes from Ecclesiastes. There's actually a lot of famous little phrases that come out of Ecclesiastes. I counted 22 references to under the sun referenced throughout Ecclesiastes. All of the work that we do while we are alive and toiling away. But some of our most important work is done in the dark, internally. I'm a member of the National Speakers Association and went to one of the annual conferences where I met a bunch of other speakers, including an Orthodox rabbi who I mentioned, I do this talk about ethical wills and this whole theme of toiling under the sun. And he said, but the most important work is done in the dark. So, well, there are other things we can do in the dark too. But right at the beginning of Ecclesiastes, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. All of our worldly achievements are vanity and grasping for the wind. And there were 32 references in these 12 chapters to this idea of vanity. One passage reads, "For all is vanity, all go to one place, all are from the dust, and all return to dust. The work of our hands will not endure for long." So, if I may, I'm going to put on my little reading glasses because I can't see anything closer than my hands without readers. But in chapter 2, verses 4 to 11 of Ecclesiastes, my Gideon's Bible, I took their advice and took a copy. Our author talks about all of his achievements in this world. "I made my works great. I built myself houses and planted myself vineyards. I made myself gardens and orchards, and I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made myself water pools from which to water the growing trees of the grove. And living in a desert climate, I can tell you that's a very important thing to do, because in our historic cemetery, the irrigation system failed decades ago, and we've got dying trees now. So water. Verse 7, "I acquired male and female servants, and had servants born in my house. Yes, I had greater possessions of herds and flocks than all who were in Jerusalem before me. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the special treasures of kings and of the provinces. I acquired male and female singers, the delights of the sons of men, and musical instruments of all kinds." This guy is living the life. "So I became great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me." Important point, he still has his wits about him. Not everybody can say that, given the incredible amount of dementia that develops in our population these days. "Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my reward from all my labor. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on the labor in which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity, all and grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun." And then I turned to myself to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can man do who succeeds the king? Only what he has already done. Then I saw that wisdom excels folly, as light excels darkness. So this is a man who's achieved much. He's had a great time. He enjoys life and food and drink and song. And that's great. But at the end of our lives, what is left? wisdom. What wisdom can we pass along to our loved ones and to the world at large? Heck, we have the internet. We can make videos of ourselves spouting our wisdom, and maybe it'll go viral. So if all of our hard work and pleasure under the sun is vanity, doomed to fade into the dust, Ecclesiastes offers us something that's not a downer, is that our wisdom is powerful, our wisdom can endure beyond the days of our lives, and there were 31 references to wisdom and being wise. So how do we pass along this wisdom? And what wisdom do you want to pass along and share? And I told you my dad died this year. He died at 93, back in August. And when I was a teenager, my dad gave me and my 3 brothers this little typed list called 12 Things to Remember. And I've had it on my desk or in my office since I got this in the 1970s. And in 2018, I gave a talk when I was going to reference this, and I realized I didn't know where this had come from. And in 2018, I asked him about it, and he said, I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, and my dad was working in downtown Washington, and he saw this list in a mom-and-pop restaurant. This list was originally written by businessman Marshall Field, who was the founder of the Marshall Field and Company department store. Hey, I just found out Dillard's is headquartered here. I had no idea. So my dad saw this list in this restaurant. He wrote them down and he took them to heart. And I'm so blessed that my dad thought so much of these ideas and thought so much of his children to pass these along to us when we were young. So the 12 things to remember: the virtue of patience, the success of perseverance, the obligation of duty, the joy of originating, the improvement of talent, the worth of character, the wisdom of economy, the value of time, the pleasure of results, the dignity of simplicity, and the influence of example. You know, that last one, the influence of example, really strikes me when I think about my husband Dave dying on inpatient hospice. And when my dad had chest pains 2 days after his 93rd birthday, he said, "I want what Dave had," meaning hospice. And that is the influence of example. So this is an ethical will in its simplest form. You could expand on each idea and share a story or paragraphs of your thoughts on those ideas, but I think this short list speaks volumes. So Marshall Field had it right. One of the things about ethical wills, if you were going to write paragraphs, you could write your whole life story that could weave in examples of lessons you want to share with people. And having listened to numerous funerals, you could appreciate how an ethical will could be used as your own eulogy. Sort of a howdy from beyond the grave. And, given our technology today, it is not hard to video record yourself actually sharing these stories and then saving it for later. Hopefully much later. But consider this list of topics for your own ethical will, because what I would like us to do, this is going to be a workshop. This is why I asked you to have something to write with and something to write on. I'm going to give you 15 minutes to write, and I'll play a little music while we do this, of some of the wisdom that you have gathered. Even if you're not 50 yet, I know you've learned plenty. And here are some topics and questions to give you a starting point. Family and friends. What are your feelings about your nearest and dearest relationships? What special words would you want to share with individual loved ones? Life lessons that you've learned in love, in work, challenges, travels, relationships, your spirituality, your favorite whatever, and why it's your favorite. Now, that can be people, places, pets, experiences, food, music, art, objects. Your thoughts on wealth and charity. What is the meaning of money to you? Saving, investing, donating to worthy causes? You know, one of the things I'll share with you about what happened with Dave, he was a volunteer for an organization called Talking Talons, which was a youth education program that used hawks and owls and the talons, so these birds of prey, to help teach about nature, but also to help students develop leadership skills. And in lieu of flowers, I asked that people make donations to this Talking Talons organization. And they let me know that they got so many donations, they started a scholarship in his name. And they also have a thrift store. So anything of Dave's that I donate, they're going to put toward the scholarship from those sales. So to me, that is just a wisdom life lesson and way of keeping that alive. Your greatest joys, ideas, actions, achievements, and why you regard them as the greatest. Your worst moments, your worst challenges, your worst relationships, losses, sorrows, and what you learned from those experiences. I'll give you one more, regrets. If you could live your life over again, what would you do differently? So I hope you were taking notes. It looks like you're all taking notes on that. So let's see. What time is it? It is 10:43. So let's 11:03 would be about 20 minutes. So think about these things and start writing, and I hope you will volunteer to share a few ideas when we get at the end of this workshop activity. I'm going to play some music.